We're going to start on time. This event is being recorded just so we can have this and share this out with our extended community. So my name is Marvin Pierre. I'm your host today. Our topic of discussion is Shades of Black Manhood, stories of Black men and boys. And we're going to be engaged in a very fruitful conversation with our special guest today, a dear friend of mine and a mentee of mine, Mr. Deion Kelly, who you all will have a pleasure of hearing from later in our presentation. Before we go into our presentation, sorry for the delay, here's a quick overview of our agenda for today. One, we'll do a quick welcome. I'll dive into an overview of 4.0 schools. 4.0, which is an organization very dear to my heart. I'm an alumni of 4.0. We'll talk more in depth about the Tiny Fellowship, which I hope you all are very interested in learning more about and will ultimately decide to apply for. And then we'll turn it over to the special guest of the evening that I'm so excited to give him this platform, my mentee, Deion Kelly. And then we'll talk about next steps after this meeting in terms of how you can continue to engage with 4.0 and also possibly apply for the Tiny Fellowship program. And then lastly, before we all leave, we want to hear from you and get your feedback on our event tonight. And so we'll provide a survey link that we would hope that you guys take the time out to complete before you sign off or at some point before the end of today. So a little bit about me, your host, Marvin Pierre. I currently reside in Houston, but if you can't tell, I do not have a Houstonian accent. I'm originally from New York City, born and raised in Southside Jamaica, Queens. I currently serve as a co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit here in Houston called 8 Million Stories that works to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline for young adults, youth and young adults between the ages of 9 to 24. I'm a proud alumni of 4.0. It is actually the program that really got me grounded in the work that I do now and gave me the footing and the access and the resources to do the great work that I'm doing now. And so learned about 4.0 through a friend. As I was starting out with 8 Million Stories, I was really trying to understand how to really build a successful nonprofit organization and have impact in the space of education. And I learned about 4.0. I currently serve as a community chair for young and youth-driven founders. So very passionate about paying it forward for those who are looking to have the same impact for our young people across this country. And ultimately, my goal is to identify and learn and help edupreneurs of color. I learn more about 4.0 in the fellowship and what it entails, and then also explain to them in greater detail what this grant opportunity can do for them in terms of building their leadership and furthering their success in their ventures. So quick info about the Tiny Fellowship. So a little bit before we go into Tiny, I want to tell you a little bit about 4.0. 4.0 is an organization that invests in community-centered models of education, providing coaching, curriculum, community, and most importantly, cash to those with the imagination to envision more equitable ways to learn and the desire to ethically test those ideas. I can't stress enough how critical 4.0 played a role in my success. And I really hope that many of you on this call who are interested in having the same level of impact and have some bold visions and ideas that are going to transform our educational spaces, that I highly encourage you to follow suit and apply today, right after this call. A couple of overviews of our values and practices: equity, joy, self-determination, growth. So the Tiny Fellowship is a big value, as I've been mentioning since we've been on this call today. It takes you from an idea stage to actually having the opportunity to implement your proof of concept in a pilot phase, right? And so really giving you an opportunity to take an idea that you have that you feel can be transformational and testing that idea aggressively as possible and getting this financial support. Also with the coaching, right? Money is important, but the other thing that we want to highlight tonight is the importance of the coaching and the learning and the access to support and evaluate your program or your idea that I think is invaluable when it comes to the early stages of developing a nonprofit and developing a venture. You want to be able to test that, and you want to have seasoned veterans or experts rather who can really advise you and coach you on how to really take your idea and scale it. And this is what 4.0 does a phenomenal job of bringing not only their alumni, but their current staff are experts in this space. And I can highly encourage you, I highly suggest that you really look into Tiny and the opportunity that it has for you to really take your idea from ideation stages to actually being able to actually run a full pilot and see, is this something that you can scale? So currently, the value of the Tiny Fellowship is valued at $25,000. Unfortunately, you are not getting $25,000. What we will provide is upwards of $5,500 in stipends to all of our fellows to complete who complete all of the deliverables required as part of completion for the fellowship. But in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that we highlight the value of this, right? The experience that you're going to engage in is worth upwards of $25,000. I can't stress this enough. This is a really good way to really get your foot in the door in the nonprofit space and hit the ground running because of the level of support and resources that 4.0 provides, not only during Tiny, but it's beyond Tiny. The alumni network is by far one of the most valuable pieces of this organization. You become part of a network that is going to do whatever it takes to ensure that you're successful. So you want to figure out if this is a fellowship that is aligned with you and is essentially the right fit for you. Where values, one of the things we want to make sure people understand is that, are you values aligned, right? Founder and co-founder an education-focused idea. That's what we're looking to fund and get behind. In order to be eligible to be a fellow, you have to be 18 and older. Though we know that young people are developing some bold ideas, right now we're not at the stage yet to bring on anyone under the age of 18. This organization allows you to establish relationships with people in the community that are focused on ideas and visions that you also care about. It can't stress enough the feedback that you're going to receive throughout this experience. And then lastly, you build on this proof of concept of your idea. So really being able to take it from the early stages, and by the end of this fellowship, you actually are able to confirm whether or not you have something that's going to change the space of education. So some things to keep note of in terms of the application timeline. So the applications open as early as September 18th this week. The last day to request feedback for your application is October 12th. I highly encourage everyone who's interested on this call in applying to be a Tiny Fellow, take advantage of the feedback, the coaching. It doesn't hurt. It's not going to be a waste of your time. Who knows, you might be getting a feedback from me. That's very valuable, right? Highly encourage everybody to take advantage of that. The application closes October 15th, so you got a little bit less than a month to get this done. Interview invitations will go out on November 6th. We're going to be holding those interviews between November 13th to December 1st, and then final decisions on your status will be sent out on January 8th. Of 2024. So super excited. Hoping to see a lot of applications, especially from folks on the call this evening. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out to us directly. All right. Oh, forgot to skip over this. So just a quick overview of how the fellowship works and some of the key moments during the fellowship. You'll have a kickoff event, which is virtual. We're still coming out of the COVID stage. We're hoping to get to in person at some point. But this is an opportunity where in one night, you'll be able to be connected with your peers. We'll talk in depth about the fellowship experience. You'll meet the 4.0 team. The camp is also going to be virtual. It's a 3-day Zoom event where you'll do a deep dive into pilot planning and growing through peer-to-peer learning. So really spending that time diving deeper into your venture and really working alongside your peers and our staff. And then the last piece, the celebration, right? This is the best moment of our fellowship, is an opportunity for us to really give you an opportunity to celebrate your experience. We talk about the progress that we made from start to finish during the fellowship. And it's also kind of like a family reunion where we come back together as a family to reconnect and celebrate each other's growth throughout this journey. So a couple of tips and tricks as you are getting ready to hopefully submit an application. You are not alone. Use those resources. Help is great. Use the app toolkit. It's jam-packed with resources that are going to help you submit a very strong application. And then make sure that you draft your answers before you apply. So, create a separate document that you can put your responses in case you need to make some last minute edits and then you're not submitting something that is not fully your best. And then make sure you're taking advantage of the feedback as I mentioned. And then keep in touch. Tonight is not the only night that I hope we have an opportunity to engage with 4.0. Check out the application page on our website. If you're interested in getting connected with an app coach, shoot them an email at apply@4.0.org. And then you also can find us on all of our social media platforms. And feel free to share this opportunity with anyone that is, that could be potentially interested in this opportunity. All right. And without further ado, I am going to turn this over to my guy and introduce him. But before, I want to give you a quick overview and introduction of who he is. Our guest this evening is Mr. Deion Kelly. He is the CEO and founder of Shades of Black Manhood. He is originally from Atlanta, Georgia, ATL. He decided to relocate to Hartford, Connecticut to pursue his passion in youth advocacy, community activism, and Black masculinity studies and empowerment. With these goals in mind, he recently completed his honors thesis at my alma mater, Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, which was titled Black Masculinity at Trinity College, Inner Stages of Performance. In addition to his renowned writing piece, he graduated with honors, smart young brother, from Trinity College on May 21st, 2023. He also majored in sociology and minored in community action. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome through the chat. Our guest for this evening, my mentee, Deion Kelly.
Yes, hello everybody. Hi. Oh my gosh. Mr. Pierre, thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. I am very honored, very excited to be here with you all today for this lovely event. And as Mr. Pierre mentioned before, do not hesitate in following your dreams and fill out that application. Cannot say that enough, okay? But we're gonna get started. So before we get into the journey of Shades of Black Manhood, let me just give you the premise of what it is. So Shades of Black Manhood wasn't just an idea, but it was a consciousness. When I was at Trinity College, I knew that there needed to be more importance upon the Black male image, specifically around solidarity. When I was younger, I always imagined there should be some kind of way that Black men could express themselves without being chastised by society, whether it is dealing with heavy heteronormative things like physicality, intellectualism, financial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As I was in the process of thinking about those things, I didn't have the terminology for it. When I came to Trinity, it opened a lot of doors for me of what masculinity could be, specifically for the Black man. I was in my room back at home in Atlanta, and I was thinking to myself, how dope would it be to give a space where Black men can really be their authentic selves? And I thought, nah, that may be too crazy. But what if it's not? Why not? So I talked about it with my lovely friend Cheyenne, and we worked on the project. Well, I worked on the project, but she helped me ever since January of this year, of 2023. And I wanted to release this so bad, but in good time, which is why I released it on my birthday, April 17th. Because the sentiment behind that is Black men gifting themselves their purpose. I think that's so powerful because a lot of times as Black men, it's hard to even feel like you're worthy, deserving, or if that particular thing that you desire is applicable to you. I'll give you an example. Let's say I wanted to pursue something in fashion design. Societal standards would say, oh, no, that's too feminine. You're not going to do that. You're not going to last, right? But my purpose says, I love to make people feel good through clothing, through image. And as a Black man with that creative intellect, I should have the ability and believing in that ability to do those things. In the same way, the solidarity of Black men is super important. It's not even a thing of like, oh, he just supporting black men, da, da, da. Is prioritizing that solidarity. There's a difference. And what Shades of Black Manhood does, it trickles down to support other minority groups, whether it's other men of color like Asian, Hispanic, um, and other races in that demographic, as well as other groups like Black women, like LGBTQI and things of that nature. So it's not just a platform, it's a consciousness raising thing. So back to the story. When I released it on April 17th, it was an amazing event to let the world know that Black men, it's time for you to believe that there is strength in your story. And ever since then, I've just been doing the work of having my motivational Mondays on my platforms that is on all social medias to encourage a Black man through my own personal experiences, as well as adding perspective to what the Black man goes through and why is that. Instead of Black Shades of Black Manhood being a thing of trying to teach Black men what to do and instruct them of what to say, it's a consciousness raising thing of like, why is, let's say, for example, a patriarchal mindset is on this Black male body to start with, and situating it through history, through social phenomenon, and everything else. Me being a sociology major, I'm very enriched with that material, especially with my honors thesis. But ultimately, outside of the rhetoric piece with courageous conversations like those, whether it's dealing with gender, sexuality, historical context, or anything else, it is the solidarity piece I hone in on the most. Like, I can say something like, Black men believe in your extra, right? It could be a blanket thing to you, but to a Black man, they'd be like, oh, I think that, but I never said it out loud. That's where the courageous conversation comes in. That's where the solidarity starts to form. That's where the belief and purpose start to shift, right? So ultimately, Shades of Black Manhood is a platform not just to encourage, not just to teach, but as a movement for all people from all backgrounds, especially Black men, to learn from, to know that Black men, they're strengthening your story. You should have authenticity within your self image, and having those courageous conversations in regards to like, why do we do, think, or say the things that we do? Because there's historical context to everything. But the most um dire thing with the Black man, we've been like one of the most disproportionate people in American history because of how the Black male body has been historicized. Think about times through slavery. You can think about the times in the economic system. You can think about times with the household and everything else. It's not to say, oh, I want a Black man to be more feminine or I want a Black man to be more masculine. Understanding the balance between the two. That's what masculinity studies do, especially for the Black man. And ultimately adding a feminist consciousness to those things, to the Black male mindset. Because again, I'll be honest, for Black men on the call, Black men on the call, y'all gonna agree with me. Y'all had a mindset before where it was just like, oh, what I said was fire. And then other people would be like, it's kind of misogynistic, sexist, just a little bit, just a little bit. But that's the thing. We've been conditioned to have these thoughts and ideologies for so long. And it's time for us to break free from that. That doesn't have to be our story. That doesn't. So Shades of Black Manhood is here to stay and continue to do the work to honor the self-image of the Black man as well as having those courageous conversations.
Thank you for that opening, Deion. As you all can see, he is ready to work. He is very clear in his why, and I'm sure 4.0 is going to be getting an application for him. So my follow-up, another question I want to pose to you, Deion, is so, we got centered on, this idea around Shades of Black Manhood. So how do we incorporate, how do you think we can, how do you anticipate incorporating Black feminist thought and the intersectionality with the Shades of Black Manhood movement, Black men movement, excuse me.
That's a good question. So the first thing in regards to adding a feminist and intersectional consciousness to the Black male body is first the Black man believing that that's possible. I think it really starts with the willingness that, hey, as a Black man, I can be an understanding and apply such practices to decolonize, as someone just mentioned in the chat, great word, decolonize a lot of white patriarchal thinking. I'll give you an example. So, from in the words of my girl Bell Hooks, plantation patriarchy is one phenomenon that's abundant within the Black man. So, what plantation patriarchy is, back in slavery times, there was this idea where Black men felt like in order to be a man, I have to do everything that my overseer is doing to my family, to myself, to make my masculinity more like raw, like her, right? But so you see that a lot of times where a lot of Black men, not generalizing, but just through data and stuff, a lot of Black men have that mindset to where they think if I get the money, the bands, and everything else, that I'm man enough, right? And I have the ability or the authority rather to overtake anybody else that's in my way, whether it's my wife, my children, my friends, or anything else. I'm gonna give you another example, and this may sting for some of y'all. Preference with the Black man can be induced with plantation patriarchy, and here's why. I made a video about this on my page, so y'all can look at it. But the point of that is the idea of preference for the Black man isn't the issue; it's the consequences behind it. So if you are in the interracial relationship, there are few that have those good intentions. However, the consequences behind it is the following. The Black men, Black woman, excuse me, deemed of them being ratchet or ghetto or not desirable and having colorist narratives like she's too dark, she's too this, she's too that, right? As well as appeasing white women in the same regard with the preference being suitable for the Black man. You'll have a white woman. I literally responded to someone the other day. You'll literally have a white woman who'll be like, "Oh my gosh, what's so wrong with the preference? Like Black men preferencing whatever they want in their race, outside their race." And again, it goes back to the consequences of that because that caused a divide within the household and the Black community. They can, and you'll have the consequences of Black women thinking that they're not good enough, but also thinking like for the Black man, in order for me to thrive extra outside of financial, I need to have a white woman by my side in order for me to get in rooms and to be like, hey, this is who I'm dating. Da, da, da. And again, the point is not about the intention itself. That don't even matter. It's the consequences that come from that representation. But the thing about interracial dating is a whole thing for another day. But you see the whole concept of how the Black man is situated when it comes to approaching the colonial consciousness, like a bell hooks with plantation patriarchy, like the feminist thought with Patricia Hale Collins, like queer theory with Judith Butler, and and believing ultimately in the ability to negotiate masculinity in itself. So I think the first thing starts with Black men being willing and believing that, hey, I can negotiate my masculinity just like the default platform, i.e., white European cisgender man, did for us and gave us the thing. So it starts there. And incorporating that in our day-to-day lives is just understanding like simply understanding why do I think like this in a way of like, why do I think everything has to be straight? For example? Or why do I think everything has to be about sports when it comes to like job application or profession for a Black man? Why do I think that I need to be a womanizer and all these other toxic traits about women to my friends to be cool? Why is my cultural intellect like coming against, right? To question those things. I think that's a good start for it. So I know that was a long answer, but I think the most important thing we have to question these ideas, like why is X, Y, and Z situated that way, but also be willing to um negotiate our masculine presentation through feminist thought, allowing for a balance in regards to masculine and femininity for the Black man, as well as intersectionality with Black men believing in all their identities outside of them just being a Black man. Because you can have religion tied to that, you can have sexuality tied to that, you can have your educational background tied to that. Those are all encompassed into the Black male image too. So yeah.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions, but I wanted to see if the audience had any questions. Feel free to give your pose your questions in the chat or come off mute. And if you have any questions for Deion. All right, so I don't know if you don't have any additional questions. So Deion, so how can schools, parents, and community organizations better engage in this space and support our young boys and men of color, especially in this times where we're seeing a lot of our history and our representation being removed in our schools, and this conversation about just what our kids are getting access to. So how do we, how can we ensure that this is something, a conversation that parents are having, our communities are supporting, and giving kids an opportunity, young people, young men specifically, an opportunity to have robust conversations around?
That's a good question. And I have a great answer because I thought about a study that was done on the collegiate level when it came to the retention rates for Black men, and they're very low. So one of the solution-oriented ideas was focusing on the Black man. Now, let me be specific what that means. Focusing on a Black man does not mean, oh, we're just going to assume that sports is your end goal to get that scholarship to college, and that's it. And not believing in any kind of academic ability for you. That's the first thing. Because a lot of times the Black men, based on physicality, that's what people go off of. So if someone look at me, right, I'm skinny man, whatever, right? If someone look at me, a recruiter, and they would say something to me like, yeah, if you really want to get in this college, I think, running track will be good. So that way you can go to X, Y, and Z school. And that's already making me lose because that makes my capability think that I'm just applicable to sports. Like I sing, I dance, I write, everything else. So I think in order to have those robust conversations, I think the focus upon men of color, especially Black men, need to happen. And that can happen in multiple ways. Um, Pull them to the side, being like, hey, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. Would you need extra assistance with that? And then just in lifestyle, life skills wise, it's the same concept. Don't situate the Black man as someone who can just do one thing or the other. Black men are very dimensional. Like Shades of Black Manhood like Shades is an acronym, and one of the tenets of the platform is dimensional. We're not a one trick pony. We have a lot of things to us. So for me personally, I sing, I dance, I cook, I write. I work at OPP for my lovely CEO, Hector Rivera, who's in the chat. Like I do it all. And Black men can have it all too. So it really comes from an inspirational and a work maintenancing rhetoric for the Black men. And now when people hear that, they're going to hear the following. They're going to be like, oh, so what you saying? Like, you think Black women don't need assistance? You think Hispanic people don't need the assistance? That's not what I'm saying at all, because the solidarity for each group is completely different. So what a Black woman may need is not in the same means as what a Black man will need, right? So in the context of education, like you said, and looking at the numbers and looking at the retention rate, instead of us saying, oh, they just need to figure it out, come to class, let's really put the extra on making sure our Black men win. And that's not babying them. That's not, oh, you just need to do X, Y, and Z. That is ensuring that they are feeling themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, but most importantly, intellectually. Child's gonna read a book. Child's gonna read something, and that really depends per instructor, per institution, and per programming. So one thing in our alma mater, Trinity College, right, and I'm pretty sure in your alma mater for this org I'm about to say, the Men of Color Alliance, I made sure the culture was a thing of like, men of color, you have leadership on this campus. Use it. And every time we had those meetings, I gave room and opportunity for men of color in the space to be like, oh, I think this would be dope. And guess what? When we allow for ourselves to work collaboratively in the space, we had amazing events. I think this was the best year for Boca yet, but we can talk about that offline, Mr. Pierre. But it's those things, and honestly, creating those what does my professor call it? Intellectual safe spaces for Black men. I'll say it like that. I think that's what needs to happen and be infused in order for not only a thing to one um be stagnant and be like, okay, this is all they need, but a consciousness of intellectual safe spaces for any minority group, but especially for Black men, I would say.
Thank you. And then speaking of your boss, appreciate you, Hector, for joining. Hector has a question for you. In your opinion, what are the best ways to engage young people in these new age conversations? How do we introduce this content and how do we make them comfortable enough to participate in the conversation? Great question.
I have so many rapid responses, but I'm gonna answer one by one. So the first part, engage the best ways. No, you didn't. My alarm, sorry. Sorry. The best way to engage, right, these audiences of young people is to first deconstruct the idea with ageism and adultism, that definition. Ageism is basically telling a young person, you're too old to understand X, Y, and Z. And that's why you need to live it to me. Adultism in the same concept, oh, you're too young to understand this, that, and third. So you need to let the grown-ups handle it because we've been in this long. And what that does is it cripples young people by making them believe that they're only going to be suitable to a fixed mindset. Now, I'm not saying give them mentorship, like give them mentorship in those areas. But what I'm saying at the same time, sometimes the teacher has to let the student be the master. Mr. Pierre is a great example. This man literally told me, I'm gonna tell y'all word for word what he told me. He literally told me, Deion, if you want to do this thing, because I didn't have a name for Shades of Black Manhood yet. If you want to do this thing to support men of color, Black men especially, write it down and do it. He didn't say that in a way to attack me or to antagonize me. He said it in a way that was cultivating towards my like potential as an intellectual, but as a nonprofit leader as well. It was a mixture of Deion, get your stuff together. But at the same time, Deion, you can do it. You just gotta work at it. And with me being a young person, because I'm 22, with me keeping that in mind and allowing myself to believe that yes, I have capability to do X, Y, and Z, we're here now. So that's a prime example of in order to best engage them, sometimes you have to let them lead. Even if it's like the worst idea, treat it like your child. Just be like, support, yeah, just no, just a little bit, right? But let them lead, I think. And then the second question of how to introduce content and making it comfortable enough for them to participate. I think that really is per individual. It really depends on circumstance, right? So to introduce the content to one person can just be like, oh, just come to these sessions and we'll just explain to you what X, Y, and Z is, and you can have the opportunity to add your spiel in, right? Another way to introduce it is just engaging the material in like a very unique way, like a TED Talk or a Kahoot or something like that, to have like a visual aspect to it. Um, so introducing content in that way just allows them to just see what it is, and they just determine if they want to move forward or backwards. And depending upon your relationship with that young person, and depending upon um their comfortability with the topic, you move from there. And comfortability comes in um honestly, I'm gonna take another route. There was always a saying of like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sadly, there are certain things, topics, and ideas that we have to teach the young people. Police brutality is one of them, or minorities on the call. So it's like they have to be aware of those things because if not, then the blood's gonna be on our hands, for example, in that context. So in the same manner, I would just say they have to be comfortable getting uncomfortable. But in that process, that's where the mentorship stays and it doesn't leave. It's like in the midst of you learning these things and being uncomfortable with it, I'm going to give you a safe space to understand these things because I have to go through the same thing too. So I think ultimately the engagement with the people, similar to the engagement of Black men in education specifically, comes when we really facilitate and manage the intellectual safe spaces for them. That would be my response to Hector.
All right, you got some more questions, Deion.
Hey.
This is good. This is good. How would you encourage Black men from all walks of life to feel comfortable to embody their own shade of manhood? And then the follow up to that is how would you also, is every Black man's shade of manhood different?
So the first part, how would I encourage men from all walks of life to be comfortable? Just do it. It seems so it's easier than it looks. So like for example, me doing all the hand gestures and da 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 da. I ain't do this before. I ain't do this 10 years ago. Like this was in my trailer video. I'm putting that stuff in purposely. Anyways, but what when you just do it, the right people will be drawn to you to really elevate what God has intended for you to become, especially as a Black man. God doesn't see race or anything like that, but in societal standards to allow you to be becoming of who you really are. So, for example, for me, if I were to listen to my so-called friends be like, Deion, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't do that, I would not be here today to really unpack the crisis of masculinity that Black men are facing. The whole idea of traditionalism that is like very abundant with these alpha male podcasts and stuff like that. We really want to get into that, right? So when you just do it, the right people will be drawn to you. But in the same breath, that's why you have to be knowing of like, this is my story. Like this, let's say I'm Kennard, for example. This Kennard now was not the same Kennard back then. And I'm glad that I'm able to embrace this side of Kennard because this is really becoming a full God intended for me to. And when you have so much passion and stronghold over that, hey, no one take that from you because now people gonna look at you like, oh, why are you being weird? Because this is my weird. And when they're bothered by it, they realistically see the potential that they can have for them. So when you're just doing it and modeling it for somebody else, you don't know who you're gonna touch. You don't know who you're gonna encourage. You don't know who you're gonna impact in such a mighty way that you're not even aware of to really be a Black man, not only for society, but a Black man for themselves. Black masculinity is authentic because it's so to answer your second question, there is different shades. That's the point. Like literally in the logo, bro, there's literally 5 different shades of a Black man. There's one suit, one like surfer thing or whatever. It's all in there, right? But that's the cool thing about it. There's one Black man who comes from entrepreneurial background. There's another one that comes from artistic background. There's one who's an educator. Like I said, there's so many dimensions to us that we just downplay, and we're not doing that no more. We're not doing that no more. So yes, in order to feel comfortable, you have to embrace it for yourself and model that and just do it. And even if you have trickles against the grain and stuff like that, don't stay there. And the second is every shade of Black manhood different for every Black man? It is. And embrace that too. And with embracing differences, when you understand it, um, comprehend it too. Comprehension is like, okay, it's when you have knowledge of it, apply that wisdom elsewhere. Knowledge is us, you just getting all stuff, knowing like, oh, Deion is X, Y, and Z. The wisdom comes when you be like, hey, Deion is doing this, and I think you should allow yourselves to do your own thing too. Wisdom is applying that knowledge, right? So I know I give long answers, but I'm just very passionate about the stuff, and that would be my response to Kanari.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let me see if we got some additional questions. So before we start wrapping up, my final question, and I'll probably um, put them all together. What's the long-term impact? What long-term impact do you hope that your organization will have in this space? And secondly, how can we follow up about your work, and how can we support your work? Donations, whatever you need. I'd like for you to share that with the audience today. You got a big turnout.
Yes, thank you so much again for everyone coming. So the first thing with long-term goals, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I definitely want a team for starters. This work that I'm doing is not easy, and it's exciting work to do because you have one part of like motivation and um solidarity, kind of centric thinking, and another part about the intellectual part of it, like having these courageous conversations. I threw a lot of terms at y'all: plantation patriarchy, intersectionality, queer theory, stuff like that. All those things do apply to the Black male body. And encouraging people of those social phenomena is a task in itself, right? So the long-term goal is for me to have a team. It will become an LLC in regards to like profit and things like that. Um, and allowing for this consciousness raising platform to really slowly but surely reach the masses. Because let's be honest, I'm not the first to do this in regards to like the Black male image, but that's a good thing about these kind of platforms. There is a unique centric thing for each portion that the Black man can cadence to. There's a brother platform called Express Yourself Black Men, where it's just like just that, express yourself in regards to like emotional social vulnerability. There's another one that says Black men can cry, really having a focus on emotional intelligence with the Black man. So even though I'm not the first to do this kind of thing, I am the first to do this thing of encompassing those things through like very intellectual rhetoric, like plantation patriarchy, and all those things. So I want to continue to have my team as well as myself be educated on those things and encourage Black men to educate themselves too. As I said in my trailer, I am not Jesus, so I don't know everything, but I can just share my story and my journey and my experiences and give context to that. Because who better to tell you about the Black male image than a Black man? And with future collaborations with like other minority groups or other people like Black women and stuff who done this work, that's another thing too. So long-term goals is definitely having more speaking engagements like this. I was very excited to do this, to really have those conversations, to give solidarity and space for Black men to be like, bro, I've been thinking about X, Y, and Z, and be comfortable with that. So long-term goals for the longevity of a consciousness raising thing about the Black male image, not only for solidarity, but for rhetoric, and then having a team with me to pursue that mission and monetize it in a way. Even though I don't focus on that first, but it has to work. Now, in regards to supporting me, you can follow all of my social medias, Shades of Black Manhood. Cannot miss it. When you type that into Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, even, it will boom, it will pop up. So when you follow that platform, you are now engaged into the experience of what the Black man goes through, and as well as encouragement along the way with those. I literally made a video the other day for I call my motivational Mondays M&Ms for Black men to keep it bouncy, But I literally talked about how you just need to follow your dreams because dreams equals purpose. A lot of people don't know that. So when you sleep on your purpose or don't activate your purpose, you don't activate your dream. So as a Black man, that's very important in itself because we feel like, oh, that dream of me one day opening up a barbershop is too far from then. I should just work under somebody. No, you don't. But the thing I think is the hardest for the Black man, we feel like we got to get it now in order to let people know, like, hey, I'm doing my thing. Mr. Pierre didn't get to where he was at in like a day. That's not how life works at all. He literally celebrated 6 years the other day. Yes, it's my mentor, so of course I'm gonna be up to date to his stuff. for 8 million stories. He literally just had a commercial from Doritos like about a couple weeks back or so. And that took time. That took consistency. That took purpose building. And when Black men start to understand that and hone to that, and that's why Shades of Black Men is just a platform to give that comfort. I and the rest of your brothers, Miss Pierre is one of them, will be supporting you because it's a dream come true now. Miss Pierre gave me the opportunity. I literally screamed in my room. I was about to shout. But anyways, but that just it's the gift that keeps on giving for Black. And that's the thing that needs to happen. It's a lot of focus on like money and rhetoric and all this stuff, but where is the love at the end of the day for the Black man? Where is that? What's this solidarity at? So to answer your question, those are my long-term goals and I goals, and I just really can't wait to continue to share the work with you guys as I learn myself because I'm learning with everybody, all my brothers. So yeah.
Deion, thank you so much for this very enriched conversation. I learned so much. As always, man, just super proud of you for the work that you're doing and stepping out on your dreams and just diving right in. And that's commendable, especially for someone who's just a recent college grad and you're not waiting for life to throw you lemons, right? You making lemonade right away, and so that's um, commendable, and I truly appreciate you, and I hope you continue to blaze a trail for other young men to do the same. I want to, before we get ready to sign off, see if anyone had any final questions or comments for Deion and the job well in the work that he's doing and what he's already accomplished as well.
Hey, I'll jump in. This is Daryl Glover. I'm down in Atlanta. First off, Deion, man, thank you for sharing your story and your journey and for the work that you do. Very inspiring. Yeah, really, 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 really great. I have a wrap up question. I'm curious because I work with young children in the work that I do, and I really relate to a lot that you shared as far as just the arts and Black men, the role that we play. Um, what was your journey like as a child? Were you celebrated? Were you able to explore? Um, and yeah, I'm just very interested in that. And I guess the follow up to that would be, what would you any words of advice to someone teaching, mentoring, or raising colorful, artistic Black boys?
That's a great question. I almost started crying because this story hits. But when I was younger, I wasn't aware that my artistic and cultural values could be a reality. So
Mm,
I figured out early on that I could sing, not sing, but sang. I just sang now. We're not going to do that now. It's not what it's about. But I can sing, I could dance, and I was just a very smart kid. But I think the most difficult part about it was feeling that praise from my father and my brothers. I have three brothers, and I have my father who we're not on the best of terms. I'm on a forgiving journey. So it was hard to think that that could be a thing for me to endure with. So my struggles during, I think it was very pertinent between my middle school years and my high school years. It was like between like eighth grade and like ninth, 10th grade ish. Where I was just like warring between like, dang, if I sing, I dance, I do all this stuff, can I really do that and just stick to the books and stuff like that?
mm,
Um, and something told me, God most importantly, let's be honest, not something, God told me, yeah, you can. So I really just started to embrace it. I think a lot of things that are trickling with young people is just like, when is the right time to embrace it? I think the right time is to just do it. And again, when you do, like I said before, when you do it, the right people will come around you. I can personally tell you some people that are on the call specifically who really encouraged me to be the Black man that I am today. My brother Nathan Dancy, who introduced me to Trinity, who was my host, who saw the potential in me in regards to like my aspiration, my dreams, how artistic I was. He was like, yeah, Trinity College needs that. And he has been my brother ever since. Not my actual brother, but yeah, he's my brother. He's been my brother ever since. And having that mentorship of just not only safe intellectual spaces, but just a loving place with those things I was just curious about really helped me a lot to situate it for myself and be willing to situate it for myself. So my journey was a long-lived one to really understand that though I've had these struggles, and I was effeminized a lot too. What that basically means is I was called too girly, people call me gay and stuff like that. And even if that was a reality, that shouldn't be something that's pressed upon either societal wise. Is something that again should be situated per the individual to embrace that part of themselves, but also embrace the ideas of those things occurring for the Black male body, right? And I think what you said, what I would tell myself or how we can encourage um the young people, especially Black men, um, to really be comfortable with those aesthetics. Just tell them one thing: you're worthy to be here. That was advice that I got from one of my teachers. I never cried in front of any of my professors except for one Black professor because I was struggling. I was like, oh my gosh, sophomore year of college, what am I gonna do? And he was like, Deion, you're worthy to be. You're worthy to be in any space you enter. And when they're always reminded and reassured of that space and that place, it always turn out for the good, even if it takes a minute to get there. And even when you're at a better place, it's still managing it. The reassurance that they needed was pinnacle um, to who they're becoming and push them who they need to be. Yeah, I think with those things in mind, it allows for the young people to be at a better place. But at the
Oh,
same
not that one. Well, yeah, that's fine.
but at the same time, not ignoring the challenges that come along the way. So ultimately, for the Black man, that consciousness of reassurance needs to be so abundant too. We need to be reassured a lot. We've been through so much trauma, and that's another topic for another day I can make on my page, right? But yes, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Deion.
Thank you.
Daryl, thank you for that great question. Folks, this is bringing us to a close. Again, Deion, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. The audience as well, thank you for coming out to learn more about 4.0. We are going to put the survey in the chat. I would greatly appreciate you all before you hop off to complete the survey, just so we can collect some information and feedback on this session today and what has been a great conversation that we've had the honor to hear from Deion. And this is his first speaking engagement and will not by any stretch of an imagination be his last. I think more folks will be coming to call for your services. And this time, it's time to cut the check. Yesterday's price ain't today's price, right? So we're going to speak life into that. So thank you all. Again, we have put, once again, the survey in the chat. Feel free to fill that out, please, before you sign off. Again, thank you all, and we look forward to hearing from you and receiving applications if 4.0 is something you are interested in learning more about. Thank you guys again. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Deion.